Hey everyone, I hope that you're doing well. I just wanted to do a weekly check-in now that we are headed toward Unit 4. So this week we're starting Unit 4. Of course, the first week of the unit we're focusing on the readings and the videos and completing the reading tweets. If you have any questions about that, please don't hesitate to reach out and let me know. This time around we will be talking about nationalism as a force in Latin America that pushed back, I should say, against neocolonialism and scientific racism and some of the trends that we saw at the end of Unit 3. So, Unit 3, we talked about some of the instability of early independent nations in Latin America, some of the reasons for that included sometimes crippling debt to European nations, principally to Great Britain and to France, but then also the impetus of those same nations to invest in infrastructure, to invest in what they called progress with a capital P in terms of developing new technologies like railroads and telegraphs. Latin American nations wanted to have the modern cutting edge types of infrastructure and technologies so that they could show that they were on par with other world nations. But most often they needed the intellectual capital that some of those European nations had, as well as actual financing for those things. And so the debts increased. And also along the way, ideas, very racist ideas about mixed heritage people, since most, most or many, I should say, Latin Americans are either indigenous, many have African descent or African heritage, many have a mixed indigenous and European background. And so it was some of those, that reality, I guess I should say, along with 19th century ways of thinking about quote unquote racial science. And again, it was considered science then. We consider it pseudoscience now. Led a lot of Latin American elites to go so far as to even whiten their skin. And we saw that with Benito Juarez, who was a Zapotec person himself. Porfirio Diaz, another Mexican president, looking at him, his skin increasingly got whiter. To plans by places like Brazil, Argentina, that actually had a lot of European immigration from places like Italy and Southeast Europe. They had plans to, quote unquote, whiten their populations by having European immigrants come into their countries and thereby dilute the indigenous or mestizo populations. So all these things are wrapped up in that notion of scientific racism that we looked at in Unit 3. We're going to think about how nationalism was a way of pushing back against that. So we're going to see kind of the reverse in Mexico with the revolution. One of the great Mexican thinkers, Jose Vasconcelos, had an idea about La Raza Cósmica, or the cosmic race, which was essentially just turning all of those scientific racist ideas on their heads and saying, no, intermixing actually makes a people stronger, as we see here in Mexico. There was a similar trend in Brazil that we'll see with a thinker, a sociologist named Gilberto Freire. He came up with the idea of a racial democracy in Brazil, the idea that there was essentially no racism because of the ways that Brazilian people came together. And again, this notion that the coming together of, in Brazil especially, people of African heritage who had been enslaved in the 19th century with people of Portuguese descent would make for a stronger population than there otherwise might be. So those are some of the big kind of contextual things we'll be thinking about. We'll also be looking at the first social revolution of the 20th century in the Mexican Revolution. And then Unit 5 will deal more directly with other revolutions that came later in the 20th century, as well as the reaction against those. So importantly, if you're not sure where the guiding question is for the unit, because all of our assignments kind of center on that guiding question, so the reading tweets are meant to be your notes on the readings, so you can kind of keep track of notes as you go. And hopefully you're taking notes about events and figures and people and issues that relate to the guiding question. Then the timeline assignment, you of course write about the topic you choose, but you also explain how understanding that topic will help us answer the guiding question. You can read each other's work as you make a connection, and then the journal entry is where you put it all together and say, based on everything I've done thus far, here is my answer to the guiding question for this unit, as well as my reflections on what we did in this unit. Hopefully that's helpful. If you have any questions about any of that, if that's unfamiliar, if you're not sure where to find the guiding question, please don't hesitate to reach out and let me know. And I hope that you're doing well. I hope that you have a safe and happy Halloween this week if you observe that. And also looking forward to the Dia de los Muertos, which has various manifestations in Latin American nations, Mexico included, of course. All right, we'll leave that there, and I hope you're having a good day.